Hello everybody. Today's topic has to do with the two dates which, in my opinion, have shaped the current map of the United States of America. In fact, today's topic is the comparison between the theft of 50% of Mexico's territory and Spain's theft of Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines. How can those dates be similar? Well, we'll see. We'll present the facts, and everybody will be entitled to their own personal opinion. But the conclusion that we will jump into will be that probably the two dates reflect two very similar events in history. In fact, let's remember these two important dates: May the 8th, 1846, and February the 15th, 1898. Some light needs to be shed, definitely, upon these two embarrassing and dark dates for humanity. I think both reflect the oppression and the abuse of power of a stronger country over a weaker one. In fact, the two historical contexts need to be analyzed closely. Let me refresh your memory about the Mexican War. You can see in the picture on the left that this is the disputed territory in red. Okay, it was supposed to be neither Mexican nor North American. Okay, and this is the territory that Zachary Taylor and his men dwelled for provoking the Mexicans into war. They were not supposed to be here in the first place because the border between Mexico and the United States was this one that I am um, indicating through the pointer. Okay. Well, basically, after the annexation of Texas into the Union, obviously Mexico knew about the real intentions of the United States, but they didn't prepare well enough for the encounter, for the fight, eventual fight. Sorry, they knew that they would have to fight the Anglo-American army is sometime or another, but they didn't prepare well enough. In fact, Zachary Taylor and his men obeyed James Polk's orders of being here in this area, right? Right after the annexation of Texas as a state into the map of the United States of America. Well, obviously, James Polk's desire was not just to get this area, this disputed area, but all of this, right? He clearly wanted to get all of Mexico's territory north of the Rio Grande. Okay, right. Let's go back to the text then. Well, before the United States formally declared war on Mexico, General Zachary Taylor defeats a superior Mexican force in the Battle of Palo Alto, north of the Rio Grande River. Well, that was the provocation that he finally got the Mexicans into. By being in the disputed land, he knew that he would be confronted with the Mexican army, and he did everything possible to lure them into war. Okay, finally he was successful. I don't know. Well, we don't know exactly if Mexico responded or it was just an act of self-aggression by Zachary Taylor's men, because we don't know exactly who shot the first shot, right? Well, basically, what happened was that we go back to the picture. This is the camp that Zachary Taylor's men used for camping in the area. Okay, and this is the camp which was supposedly attacked by Mexican forces. However, we have no evidence of that. What we know is that Zachary Taylor got direct orders from the president and he executed them perfectly. The drift toward war with Mexico had begun a year earlier when the US illegally annexed the Republic of Texas as a new state. 10 years before that, 1836, the Mexicans had fought an unsuccessful war with Texans to keep them from breaking away to become an independent nation. Since then, they had refused to recognize the independence of Texas or the Rio Grande River as an international boundary. In fact, in January 1846, President James Polk ordered General Zachary Taylor, as I mentioned before, to move a force into Texas to provoke Mexicans and achieve the desired war that would give them the legitimacy to formally rob Mexico of half its territory. Supposedly, Taylor was ordered to take his forces up to the disputed borderline at the Rio Grande. That is the camping we have shown before. Rio Grande is this border, the current border, right? So he took his troops here to this part of the country in the disputed area, right? He had no grounds for that. It was an illegal movement, and well, obviously he had very clear intentions, right? He was ordered to take his forces there by the president himself. The Mexican General Mariano Arista viewed this as a hostile invasion of Mexican territory. Of course it was. And on April 25th, he took his soldiers across the river and attacked. Well, that is not clear, okay? That is not clear at all. That is what Anglo-American historians claim, right? What is a fact is that the US Congress declared war on May the 13th and authorized a draft to build up the US Army. Taylor, however, was in no position to await a formal declaration of a war that he was already fighting. He didn't care. It never came. It never arrived. Mexico never declared war back to the United States. So what happened was that Taylor knew that with or without the declaration, it didn't make any difference whatsoever. In the weeks following the initial skirmish along the Rio Grande, Taylor engaged the Mexican army into two battles. On May the 8th, near Palo Alto, and the next day at Resaca de la Palma. Well, he won both wars, obviously, but we have to know to what extent the Mexicans fought with the intensity that was required. Before that, there was no war, right? Obviously, we have to understand that those were acts of provocation from another army, and I guess the Mexicans generals had orders not to fall into any sort of provocation. Following his victories at Palo Alto and Resaca de la Palma, well, obviously Anglo-American historiography has been very clear, very intentioned to highlight that these were real battles. I'm not sure about that. I think that were just the pretexts of war, obviously. And Taylor crossed the Rio Grande and took the war into Mexican territory. Other generals continued the fight, which finally ended with General Winfield Scott's occupation of Mexico City in September of 1847. Well, I would like to highlight that the United States, in my opinion, were very well intentioned from the beginning. They knew exactly what to do. in order to lure Mexico into war. They wanted that territory at all costs, and they didn't save any efforts for achieving and being obviously successful in their effort. Well, they committed three illegal actions. The first one was to um, go into disputed land and later into Mexican territory itself altogether, without any sort of justification, any sort of reason, any sort of uh, legitimacy for being there. The second illegal act they committed was to declare war, even though Mexico never declared the war to them. They just wanted a pretext, a small pretext to declare war, and they already got it. And finally, they made another illegal action, which was to go into Mexican territory, which was not the disputed land at the moment. And in fact, General Scott occupied Mexico City in September of 1847. So that is not something that should be forgotten. Let's go into the second event, which in my opinion bears lots of resemblance to the first one. 1898 was well, obviously historical year, not only for Spain but also for Cuba, Puerto Rico, Philippines, and the United States themselves. Yes, at 9:40 p.m. on February the 15th, 1898, the battleship USS Maine exploded in Havana Harbor, killing 268 men and shocking the American populace. Well, obviously, of the two-thirds of the crew who perished, only 200 bodies were recovered and 76 identified. Well, first of all, we have to understand something. The ship arrived with no permission and no reason to be there. It was very, very similar to General Zachary Taylor's move. I think it's exactly the same thing, the same story, okay? Instead of carrying or taking men on horses, this battleship carried sailors, but it was the same kind of movement for provoking Spain into war at all costs. Okay, United States had done the same procedure. They had offered Spain to buy them Cuba, Puerto Rico, and the Philippines many times in the past, and always with the same answer: Spain was not interested in selling. And since they had been not successful at trying to buy those territories, they knew that the only option left was to lure Spain into war. Spain never declared war either. They never looked for war. They were not interested in war with the United States because they were already conducting a war with the Cuban insurgents. Okay, the sinking of the Maine, which had been in Havana since February 15th, 1898, on an official observation visit. That is wrong. That is not true. Okay, that is what American historians try to tell us. It was not. This is not true. Okay, they were deliberately trying to lure Spain into war. It was a climax in pre-war tension between the United States and Spain. Obviously, in the American press, headlines proclaimed Spain's or Spanish treachery and destruction of the warship Maine was the work of an enemy. In fact, William Randolph Hearst and his New York Journal offered a $50,000 award for the detection of the perpetrator of the Maine outrage. Many Mexicans assumed the Spanish were responsible for the Maine's destruction. In 1975, however, a team made up of the most brilliant experts in the field, and led by Admiral Hyman Rickover, who was the creator of the nuclear navy himself, concluded that the explosion had been due to internal factors. and maybe the officers had not performed their duties in a diligent manner. Well, it was a euphemism for calling them incompetence, obviously. But the fact is that these two facts, redundancy included, led to the same desired outcome. The United States got um, some parts of their territory which they had tried to achieve through different manners. They looked for war illegally. They had no grounds for being there in the first place, and they were very interested in obtaining the declaration of war. I mean, obviously, for Congress to declare war on a foreign nation, something needs to happen, and they knew it very well. They knew that they had to sink the ship in order for Congress to declare war to Spain. Many people believe that the United States sank the ship themselves. It was not an accident, others claim. We will never know because the United States sank the ship in the open sea 13 years later. That is concluding of their their hidden interests in the event. They in 1911 they transported the remains of the ship Maine, and they exploded it in the open sea, so that anybody could in the future ascertain what had actually happened to the ship. That is self-concluding of the real nature of the topic. I mean, if you have nothing to hide, you will not transport the ship and explode it in the open sea. That is self-evident. Okay, that is how United States have performed and acted in the previous centuries. So it needs to be ascertained so that the world knows what kind of actions are conducted by this nation. United States would not be what they are today if they hadn't robbed Mexico of half its territory. And obviously, I think that with respect to the Spanish maneuver, they were not very successful because both Cuba and the Philippines are currently independent nations, and Puerto Rico is a freely associated state of the country. So it means that they could decide to revert their status anytime. In fact, they have been strong defendants of the Catholic religion and the Spanish language in the past, and in that respect, colonialism has not been able to impose any new status in language or religion. I mean, in fact, many governors of the state declared that the United States had failed in their attempt to subdue and revert the Spanish order of the island. Well, I have tried to present these two facts in the most objective way possible. It is up to you as viewers to conduct critical reflection, critical review of the two facts and jump to your own conclusions. As always, I try to ascertain, to highlight some facts so that you can use your own critical thinking skills. And I'm sure that you will do so and jump to the right conclusions. This is the end of my video. I hope you have enjoyed it, and don't hesitate to add any comments in the section below. And obviously I expect to hear from you in the near future, and I encourage you to subscribe to my channel in order to keep informed about amazing and interesting historical events. Have a great day.